Welcome to Raiders on the Record, the podcast featuring Hastings High School athletics. I'm Athletic Director Trent Hansen. My colleague Tim Hanneberg and I work together to bring you the stories of Raider sports. We are thrilled to share conversations with the athletes, coaches, and alumni that represent Raider Nation. Check back weekly and be sure to share this podcast with your friends in the Raiders Network.
Vedders is a 2007 Raider graduate. During his time at Hastings High School, he was a three-sport athlete participating in football, basketball, and baseball. Trent was a captain for each sport he played, demonstrating the leadership qualities he displayed on a daily basis. Trent was also All-State in baseball during his senior year and led the team to the state tournament in 2007, placing 6th. After high school, Trent played baseball at MSU-Mankato.
All right, here we are with Trent Vedders. Trent, let's start at the beginning here of your life. Tell us where you grew up. Did you always live in Hastings? Did you eventually move to Hastings? Are your parents originally from Hastings? Give us what that snapshot of your life looked like growing up, brothers, sisters, mom, dad. Give us all the good stuff.
Well, thanks for having me. And yeah, I was born and raised in Hastings. I got an older sister. She graduated in 1999. And I got an older brother, Ryan, and he graduated from Hastings in 1997. My dad, Carl, and my mom, Marlis, were both very supportive for my sports career. I don't think my dad ever missed a game, whether it be a home game or away game. I think he was always there. I don't remember him missing a game. So it's come from a very supportive family. And with my brother and sister, Ryan and Rachel, being so much older than I am, I really look to them as role models. They had already experienced, the middle school, high school, and kind of lived their life. So I look to my brother for being a role model, kind of, as he had just gone through it pretty much. So, but yeah, they didn't always live in Hastings. My brother and sister were born in Malacca, Minnesota, and that's where my parents met. And then they moved to Hastings for work. So,
well, one thing I do like to ask is about the schools you attended in Hastings. A lot of these teachers are still around and still teaching. So, just give us a snapshot of what those schools were and any of the teachers that kind of stuck out at each school, maybe had a big impact on you. Let's hear those names and maybe they're still around and we'll send this to them.
Yeah, I went to elementary school at Chris McCullough. I had a lot of good teachers, Mrs. Fox and Mr. Papp, Mr. Cost. And I went to Hastings Middle School. I went 1 year at the old middle school, and then that's the last year. And then we moved to the new middle school, current middle school. And then obviously went to Hastings High School and graduated in 2007.
Awesome. This is a sports podcast, so we focus around a lot of sports here. So thinking back to your life growing up, what do you think one of your best or one of your earliest sports memories was?
I remember going out and, playing t-ball and whatnot. Always being involved. I even played soccer at a young age. I tried to get involved in everything because that's all I did around the house. Is kind of went through a phase of, as a young kid, I was playing with farm equipment and tractors and animals and all that. And then just transformed into just loving sports. That's all I did with the neighbor kids. We were out back playing, you name it, kickball, football, baseball. And my youngest, memory that really sticks out was I made the Minnesota Stars team back in the day. It's probably considered like a Minnesota Mash or the Blizzard nowadays, but back in the day it was called the Minnesota Stars team. And we went to Cooperstown when I was 12. Went there with my family and actually ended up playing against my cousin, which was pretty cool. He was from California. So it's always a memory that sticks out when we had grandpa and grandma there, and all of our extended family was there to support us in the Cooperstown, New York, which is Baseball Hall of Fame. It was pretty cool getting, kind of like the Little League World Series feeling. So that was a big moment when I made that team. I kind of realized at that time I could play with some of the better, higher talent in Minnesota.
You guys end up winning the game, beating your cousin, or did you guys end up losing?
No, we ended up losing. His team, I think, actually won it all.
Okay.
California, I mean, they got some good baseball players, and they came from a pretty stacked team. And I think they ended up winning it all. But if I remember right, they beat us pretty good. So I definitely swallowed my pride there. I didn't. Yeah. I couldn't hang that over his head, but
this would have made those family gatherings a little bit sweeter, though.
Yeah,
yeah. That's all right.
Yeah.
All right. So you kind of talked about it a little bit here too, but just give us a little bit of a view what it looked like for you growing up. What sports did you play? I typically like to stop somewhere in middle school. It just seems like that's when people get a little more serious with sports. So just once again, give us those sports you played growing up. Were you involved in a lot of things, or maybe kind of narrowed it down eventually when you were getting to middle school? But like I said, once again, stop at maybe around 7th grade.
Yeah, I played basketball ever since I could remember. We had a hoop out front. I'd always play basketball with my brother and my dad and the neighbor kids. I remember playing catch I still have a little pillow football that my dad would throw to me, and I would run and catch it, run into the couch. And he got us going at an early age golfing, which I think was huge. And I enjoy golfing so much now, and I think that's because I started at a young age. But we had a backyard where it backed up to a pond and a playground, and so we had a little extra of a backyard, and we'd always hit golf balls back there. And I remember that I was out there almost every day hitting golf balls across the pond, and having some of the neighbors watching me, and at probably 8 years old, how can you swing like that? And it's just I loved the game. Had a lot of fun doing it, but I played everything. I didn't really enjoy soccer, but I got involved in soccer when I was a kid. And then I started playing football with the Little Raiders, I think is the first. I don't think we had played football back then, but yeah, I try to get involved in everything. I loved playing sports. I'd say my least favorite, my first sport I dropped was soccer, but stayed with everything else. So
wonderful. So then starting in 7th grade, we could walk through 7th grade and 8th grade. What sports you played both those years. If you got brought up at any levels, maybe to a JV or high school level, let's hear about that too. But then once you're done with middle school, let's start in 9th grade. Typically do it a couple different ways, but let's start in 9th grade, fall season, what sports you played, and then we'll go through fall, winter, spring of each year of high school then too. So starting in 7th grade, let's hear about the sports you played.
Yeah, so I ended up playing football, basketball, baseball for my 3 sports. And it's funny, I continued on and played baseball in college, but I was really close to actually playing golf. I played golf in 8th grade and barely made the cut, but I made the team. And then I ended up being, I think, one of the better ones on JV. And I think I maybe played a little bit of varsity. I ended up lettering. So as an 8th grader, I thought that was really cool. I loved Coach Pete McGinnis. And it was really a tough decision. I think Charlie Brookins came into one of my classrooms in 8th grade and said, hey, you can golf the rest of your life, but you can only play baseball once type deal. I thought about that, and it's true. It's still to this day, I remember the very difficult decision I had and talk I had with Pete McGinnis, and I have a lot of respect for him. Thought he was one of the greatest coaches, and I still remember just kind of feeling that, like, did I make the right decision? But I think in the long run I did. Definitely affected my golf game today. It hasn't ever been the same. But I ended up choosing baseball. So throughout middle school, I was always football, basketball, baseball. And then typically in the summertime, I would get my golf in with my buddies. So it was kind of the best of both worlds. And it was a difficult decision to make. But like I said, I ended up playing helped my way through college. So I think I made the right decision.
Then, like I said, let's start in ninth grade. We'll talk about just go through each sport you played, any major accomplishments that went with that sport in that year. And then we could talk about all conference captain, like I said, all state, maybe how the team did as well. Just any kind of major things that happened each year, each season with those sports throughout high school.
Yeah. Okay. So my ninth grade and sophomore year, I really wasn't a standout. I worked hard, and I was one of the better players, whether it be football, basketball, baseball. But I think it was because of all the hard work I put in behind the scenes. And I obviously was really, really competitive, and I just didn't want to be average. I wanted to be the best. So I think it was really doing Raiders Express in the off season and trying to, ask my brother for all the workout tips, because he was big into lifting weights. It really kind of elevated my game and brought me to the next level. Even, like I said, sophomore year for basketball, I was on B squad. One of the things I still remember is at the end of the year for B squad, they bring up some players so they kind of get some experience with JV and varsity practices. And I was going to give Trent Hansen a hard time on this one, but I didn't get brought up. And I'm like, you know what? I said, next year I want to be the best at my age and my class. And the next year I ended up making the varsity team. I was a starter my junior, senior year. And it's still, I think if younger kids have that drive or that failure and they have that drive to respond, I think that's what it's all about. Is don't just look at it, well, I didn't make the team, I'm never going to make the team. If you work harder than everybody else in that off season, you can make the team, you can be a starter. In that junior year, I think I was the only one to start a game going into our senior year or junior year of basketball. We had one of the best seasons, got to play with Doug Plum and Jake Kranz and some really good players. So it shows that, if kids work hard, that good things will come. And for the other sports, football, I was on the JV team. I actually was a quarterback, so ahead of me was Jake Kranz, and I wasn't going to be playing varsity in front of him because he was one heck of a quarterback and 6'5", had a heck of an arm. And I kind of sat back. I knew my role. I called the plays into Jake Kranz, on the sideline wearing my ball cap, held field goals, and just try to play my role and learn from him so that I knew when it was my turn, my senior year, that I could fill that void and do as well as he did. But he was one heck of a football player, and it was fun to watch him. So
wonderful. And then let's talk about baseball as well.
Okay. Yeah, baseball. I got brought up my sophomore year, and I thought right away, I can play with these guys. There's no reason I can't. I'm a sophomore at that age. You think, the older upperclassmen, it's they feel like they're 5 years older than you at that stage. But I thought I could play with them, and I struggled right away. I don't think I hit very well. I pitched a few games, played outfield, kind of try to fill the void. It wasn't a standout by any means. And kind of learned from that, though, that experience. I think that's really big for high school kids, that even the first time I stepped out on Todd Field, I was overwhelmed. I was so nervous. I'm like, I'm really out on Todd Field, and everybody's watching me. Well, I think me playing varsity my sophomore year of baseball was probably the best thing that happened, because then my junior year I was all state honorable mention, and my senior year I ended up being all state. And it really, what kind of level you need to be playing at. How good your competition is. How hard the other kids are working. So I took that, And really in the off season I worked, I was so excited to play baseball at that time because I got moved up. I was playing really good. So I think me and Sean Dube were the only two guys that got brought up, and maybe Kyle Gangelhoff for a few games. But that was another experience that, I can play at this level. I can play with these guys. So it was a huge confidence booster. But
You talked about football being a quarterback. Talk about baseball. What positions did you play as well during your career as a Raider baseball player?
Yeah, so in baseball, I was a lefty, so I played outfield. I didn't play any of the infield positions. I played first base a little bit, but my main position was pitcher. I kind of fell into really enjoying pitching. It was something that I felt comfortable with. Standing up on the mound, knowing that you're looking at your catcher. He's going to give you the target. He's going to give you the pitch, and you got one thing to do is, either throw it by the batter or get an out. And that was my mentality. And I really enjoyed that compared to being a quarterback where you're dropping back. Coverage is always different. You might have a linebacker coming in to blitz you and trying to hit your moving target. It was more of, 6 foot, had a good arm, but all those decisions of reading the defense, it came so much more natural for me to be a pitcher. And I really kind of fell into my groove my junior year, being all-state honorable mention, and ended up, like I said before, all-state my senior year. And I just wanted to be a good, student athlete at that time. And I wanted my teammates to respect me, and I wanted to work harder than everybody else. I didn't want to be an average player anymore because I kind of felt like I did that my freshman, sophomore year. I wanted to be the best, and I wanted to work harder than everybody else. And I think it's what you do kind of behind the scenes that got me, or maybe even my failures before, really kind of led me in that direction of trying harder than everybody else.
Yeah, that's one thing I want to ask you right about now. So you talk about basketball, that B squad experience. I just feel like so many people, when they're faced with the same situation you were faced, not being brought up, seeing all their friends being brought up, a lot of times people are just going to quit. Especially nowadays, kids are just going to quit. You might have already kind of mentioned it, but what gave you that driving motivation that just said, like, hey, you know what, I wasn't brought up this year, but next year is going to be my year, and I'm going to work my tail off to make sure that happens. Like I said, when so many other people, it's just an easy out, just to quit and just give up and, make excuses. The coach hates you, this kid, I'm better than this kid, but the coach doesn't see it, or this, this, or whatever kind of excuses are used. But what gave you that motivation to kind of put in the time and effort in basketball and other sports as well to kind of have that success later on? And like you just said, you use those failures to kind of boost you forward. But what gave you that driving motivation?
Well, I would say I always had my brother there, and like I said before, he always said, "Work hard and good things will come." And I really sat back that first day of saying, I didn't get brought up. I've always been one of the best basketball players, and it was just a surprise to me. I'm like, well, maybe they're looking at getting more height, or maybe I wasn't shooting that well as I thought I was. But it's kind of what you do right away. It's what direction do you want to take? And I don't even think I sat for more than a day of just thinking, this really happened. I can go one or two directions of saying, maybe I don't want to play basketball anymore, because I kind of knew at that point I wasn't going to go play college basketball. But I enjoyed playing basketball probably more than any other sport. I really had the love for the game. But yeah, it's kind of one or two directions.
So you talked about baseball as well. One of my students right now, you talked about being a young 10th grader, being brought up. I have a kid right now on the team, one of my students who's on the team, 10th grader, young kid, get a ton of varsity playing time and just going through a slump right now in that sport. And I just feel like it's such a difficult sport, baseball, where you just get maybe 2 or 3 shots a game, and versus other sports where you get a lot of opportunities for success. So I guess hearing from you then, how would you handle like a slump? You know, you're pitching and maybe you're just not hitting the target well enough, or you're at the plate hitting and you're going through a slump as well. So, how would you handle that kind of situation, and maybe looking at motivation or ways that you handled it when you were in high school?
Yeah, it definitely can happen in baseball, especially. You have a lot of time to think. I always said that it's you get a few at bats per game, and the rest of the time you're sitting there thinking, "Oh, am I going to go 0 for 2, 0 for 3, 0 for 4 today?" And the best encouragement I would give a young player is just trust yourself, have fun, and trust yourself that everything that you've done up until that point has got you there. And it almost takes just a different mindset of saying, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, and have fun with it instead of putting too much pressure on yourselves. I didn't really struggle with that as much in baseball outside of my sophomore year, but in college I could really relate to that. I mean, in college you go with a hot hand, and the baseball season in Minnesota is so short that if you're not pitching well or you're not hitting well, you got a short season and you're going to be sitting on the bench. But just to know that, you know, have the confidence and get up there and say, this guy's probably worried that he's, you know, that I'm going to hit the ball out of the park. And really you got to have that kind of confidence of saying, I can crush this guy, and I'm going to get on base. I'm going to go 2 for 3 or 3 for 4 today. And I think they should trust themselves that they put in the work to get to that point. So it is a little difficult though when you're a sophomore looking up to like I said, your upperclassmen. They seem like they're a lot older than you at that time. Now that I'm 33, if I'm a 35-year-old or 36-year-old or 34-year-old, we're all the same age, right? But when you're in high school, it seems like, well, these guys are so much older than me. They're so much bigger. They're so much stronger and faster. And sometimes that's the case. But if you're brought up to play on varsity, then obviously the coaches see something in you. So you got to just be able to trust himself and give, and have that confidence.
Awesome. I like that a lot. Next two questions then for you, Trent. Kind of similar, but if you could break them up, that'd be great. So, what do you think one of the most rewarding experiences was as a high school athlete at Hastings High School? And then what do you think your favorite moment was as a player for Hastings High School? So, like I said, they're kind of similar, but if you could come up with a couple different things for us, that'd be great. So, the most rewarding experience and then your favorite moment.
My favorite moment was probably when we went to state my senior year. We never went to state in any other sport. And my senior year baseball season, we went to state. We ended up placing 6th, but we lost the first game, ended up, I think, losing. We lost the first game to Eden Prairie. And then after that, I don't remember who we lost to, but it was a great moment. Everybody was excited getting to that point. We're going to make it. We had played Crete and Durham Hall earlier that year, and at home I pitched. We won. They were probably the best team, and I think they ended up winning it that year. But we hit a road bump with Eden Prairie, and we lost to them. But it was a great accomplishment for our team and our guys to get there, and we really enjoyed it. We had a lot of fun at state. And then what was the other question?
Your most rewarding experience.
I would say the most rewarding experience is altogether, I was a 3-sport captain. And to me, that meant a lot. Knowing my teammates looked up to me as a leader on and off the field. And like I said, I always wanted to be a good student athlete. I got really good grades. And just knowing that in each sport, I different team, different sport, that each team looked up to me to be a captain was pretty cool. Still kind of gives me chills. I think that it's great to be named captain, but for all 3 sports, it was pretty cool. And I kind of joke around too, because I was kind of a nerd in high school. I had a full backpack, and I basically went to class and didn't really stop between classes because I didn't want to be late to the next class. So I carried all my books with me, and kind of a nerd, but I think just having that drive of trying to be, an A student and being prepared even for class or whether it be practice or a game, it was always throughout the day. I was always thinking about it, whether we had practice or a game. And I think, maybe that is where I kind of gained the trust of my teammates of being a leader. They knew I was always going to be prepared and wasn't going to have any problems off the field. And it was a pretty big accomplishment to be named 3-sport captain.
Sure. You're a little bit different than the kids right now at the high school. They try to see how quickly they could get into the room right when the bell's ringing. So it's a huge game right now. So they're not getting there way ahead of the bell. So it's how quickly they can time it. But transitioning then to high school sports again. So thinking about your coaches that you played for, you were a 3-sport athlete in high school. You also talked about golf, being big in the golf, soccer growing up too. You played for a lot of different coaches, so it's really hard to name just one person that had a big impact on you. So if you want to pick one for each sport, that's okay. If you want to pick one that just had a huge impact on your life, that's great too. So who do you think one of the best coaches you've played for is? Maybe someone that really taught you something that stuck with you, had a big impact on you the rest of your career, maybe someone that you always kind of went back to when you needed help. Who do you think that coach was in your life?
Yeah. Hastings programs have really had some incredible coaches. And like I said, for golf, Pete McGinnis, he was a great guy, a great coach, and it still kind of breaks my heart that I had to tell him the bad news of me not playing golf. But Trent Hansen, Bob Majeski, Coach Lutz, they were all great role models. The one that does stick out is Paul Hartman. Hartsey was kind of my go-to for asking any baseball related questions of playing after high school. Where should I go look to, I had interest from the University of Minnesota, and I was maybe going to go play for St. Thomas or Gus Davis, a Division III school, and ended up playing for Mankato. But I remember sitting down with Hartsey right when you walk in at school there, right by the offices, and he was a huge help in deciding on what I should do, where I should go, and what I should be looking for the next step. So I would say Hartsey would be one of my. But like I said, everybody that we played for in Hastings really, even Coach Moore. I mean, there's so many to name that it says a lot about the community and the athletic department. So
now maybe even a more difficult question, talking about your teammates, kind of similar question, but who do you think one of those best teammates was that you played for? If you want to pick one in each sport, that's okay. You already named a lot of names too, but and you could take this question in multiple different ways. I always talk about someone that you mentioned being a sophomore and playing with those older baseball players. So this could be someone that you really looked up to when you're on a team. It could be that person that you always went to for advice. It could be that person that was the same grade as you or age as you that you always had a battle against for those sports that kind of really propelled you. So who do you think that teammate was for you? And once again, if you want to pick multiple teammates, you could go for it.
I would say the nicest teammate and one I learned a lot from was Jake Krantz, just because we were both quarterbacks, and I had to wait my turn. Like I said, he was a year older, and he was a lot better than I was. Nicest guy in the world. I would say the hardest worker that that would probably definitely be Doug Plum. Doug Plum, played basketball with him my junior year. We had one of the best records, I think, junior year. And then my senior year, we kind of fell off and had one of the worst records. So it was a complete turnaround. But Doug Plum, he was probably the hardest worker, most passionate basketball player. He came in before school started. And every day, it wasn't just like, oh, I woke up early today, I'm going to go shoot hoops with my dad. It was every day, and it was before and after practice. He worked harder than everybody else by far. Another one that comes to mind is Sean Dube. Sean got brought up with me my sophomore year and played varsity baseball. But talk about a kid with hustle and heart for the game. Sean wasn't always the biggest, but he out hustled everybody. he would get walked or he would get hit by a pitch, and instead of jogging down to first base, he would sprint. And that's just the kind of guy he was. And it's pretty cool to kind of see that drive. It really and people feed off of that. I fed off of that energy from Sean and Doug Plum, and like I said before, I wasn't going to be ever as good as Doug Plum for basketball, but yet he made everybody around him better. You know, we always wanted to, or at least I always wanted to practice as hard as he did, or try to, you know, beat him in a Raider Maker, make more baskets in a practice, and it really people feed off of that. So
For sure. Next thing, you kind of already mentioned Raiders Express and weightlifting was a big improvement for you. Maybe not having
Yeah.
a ton of success 9th and 10th grade, and then that kind of great success you had during your junior and senior year. So once again, you mentioned that already, but what's some other things? And if you want to talk more about Raiders Express, that's great, or other lifting that you did. Talking about your own improvement process. What did you do during the off season? I always feel with 3-sport athletes like yourself, playing 3 sports gave you that break from the other sports, that you were really hungry to get to that next one. You know, you're ready to be done with basketball, and you're ready for baseball. And when baseball ended, you're ready for summer training and ready for football. So I know that from talking to a lot of people, that seems like always something that sticks out too. But talking about you, once again, what do you think your improvement process looked like, and how did you make those continue success throughout your high school career?
yeah, it is a little different being a 3-sport athlete, especially nowadays. I think after the baseball or basketball season, I think it was the first time I picked up my glove. All right, well, I better start swinging, and we better start throwing and getting in shape. Nowadays, there's so many different programs and good programs that you can learn from. Minnesota MASH to be one that kids can play and get better in their off season and learn the right way. Back in the day, I think Raiders Express was a good program. I recommend it. We lifted weights a little bit. We ran, did plyos. I think it was, for me personally, it was more of just getting in shape or staying in shape. I still didn't have the knowledge that I did even remotely about lifting. In high school, I would lift dumbbells, you know, try to lift 60 pounds and just try to get bulky. And for being a football player, that might be good, but being a quarterback, no. For being a pitcher, no. It's more of the light weights and repetition to work the small muscles. And I don't remember squatting that much in high school, but once you get to college, it's, you know, 2-3 times a week that you're doing front squats, single leg squats, back squats. So I didn't have the knowledge that I probably should have, but yet I feel like with, you know, trying to join up, I went to some clinics down in Mankato for pitching to just learn technique outside of what I was being taught in Hastings to see if they had any different perspectives. I relied a lot on lifting with, you know, my brother was into lifting, like I mentioned before, and he taught me, you know, proper form, but I still didn't want to, nobody else was squatting at that time. So I didn't really think it was that important, but that was probably the best thing. Once we got to college to really develop and get your legs underneath you, we squatted almost every day, it seemed like. But yeah, just to get into different programs outside of Hastings isn't necessarily a bad thing either for kids, as long as they have a good program and they're teaching the kids the right techniques. There's some coaches and clinics that probably aren't teaching kids the right way, and I really should have learned more back in the day. I think I ended up pitching too much my senior year. I think, what did they play, 25 games in a season?
Yeah, I'm not too sure, but probably sounds about right.
My record was 12-2, and I had 3 saves. So that tells you how much I threw. But just knowing different things, that you know, the right techniques, right form, really, I would say, to help kids in the off season. Sometimes nowadays people overdo it too. If you're a single sport and you're focused on baseball, you could easily, you know, hurt your arm because you're over throwing too much or you're overdoing it. But yeah, back in the day, it was mainly Raiders Express and just playing pickup basketball or, football in the backyard.
Nice. You already mentioned you went to Mankato for college, and you had a couple other colleges that were looking at you and interested, and you were mentored throughout the process too. So just let's hear about college as well. How did you ultimately end at Mankato? Talk about your college career as well, and then we'll kind of speed through the rest of the 13 years after that as well, or 10 years after that. So let's hear about the college program, college recruiting, playing in college as well, any successes that went along with that, and then we'll, like I said, fast forward till today.
Yeah, first of all, I'm a very indecisive person. And so choosing a college, kind of choosing that path for what I thought was, the rest of my life, like, I got to make a really good decision of where I want to go play sports. I didn't know if I was going to play football and baseball. I knew I was going to play baseball for sure. So I got recruited by the University of Minnesota. They wanted me to redshirt, and I kind of looked at that as negative, knowing now it was, there's nothing wrong with redshirting. Back then in high school, yeah, I want to play right away is kind of what I thought, but maybe it would have been better for me to develop a year and redshirt. I chose not to go with University of Minnesota, but I was really impressed with Mankato's baseball program. They're Division II, but they're always very competitive, going to the World Series even. So I knew they had a great program, and I remember visiting with the coach, and he's like, well, you got to be really good to play here, so I kind of wanted to. But yeah, I was St. Thomas and Gustavus were two of my other colleges that I was thinking of, and I would have played football and baseball there. And the only other school that I was considering football for Division II level was Winona. But a funny story there. So we played Roseville Friday night, and ended up going, I think we lost to Roseville, ended up going on a recruiting trip to go look at the baseball fields and meet the coaches down in Winona. And then they took me out on the football field to watch the game and meet the coaches. And I remember the tight end for Roseville, he was a 6'6", 200 and some pounds, just a big guy. And I kind of thought to myself, I'm like, I don't even know if I want to try to play at this level, being a quarterback, when you got guys that are that big every day. So I knew I was always a lot better at baseball, but it kind of made my decision easier of saying, well, maybe I just want to focus on baseball and focus on what I'm good at instead of trying to play football. But I ended up choosing Mankato, and I think it was a great decision. We went to the World Series and had a winning season every year. I mean, we had a really good team, so it was a great decision. I made some really good friends. So ultimately, I graduated there with a business management major and a marketing and minor. So yeah.
So anything else to add? You talked about playing in Mankato, making it to the World Series with Mankato baseball. Anything else that went around with Mankato baseball? Any other stories or any other accomplishments that went into your time at Mankato?
Yeah, it was a kind of an eye-opening experience right away. Like I said, I got recruited by a Division I school, so I kind of thought I was going into Mankato, trying to, one of the top scholarships, and I thought I was going to do really well. Our first series, I remember playing down in Georgia, and I didn't even make it out of the first inning. And it was really, like I said, an eye-opening experience. And like every time I pitched in high school, I made it through the 7 innings, like no problem. And now my first start, my freshman year, I can't even make it through the first inning. And I remember the number 3 hitter got up and home run. I'm like, is this really happening to me right now? So it was a rough start. It really was. I was 0-3 my freshman year. But again, I tried to, in the off season, came back to Hastings, really worked on what I thought I needed to work on. In my sophomore year, I turned it around. I was 4-0 and had one of the better seasons. And then after my sophomore year, I played in a league out in Colorado. It's kind of like a Northwoods League, but a step down. It's equivalent to like a Division II caliber player. and had a lot of fun out in Colorado. Was pitching really well, probably at the top of my game, throwing harder than I've ever thrown. And I ended up hurting my shoulder. So I tore my labrum and a little bit my rotator cuff, and I couldn't even hardly pick up a baseball. So I came back, flew back, and talked to my coach Matt Maugers down at Mankato, and said, "Coach, I gotta have my shoulder looked at." So we had the university doctor, and he said right away, "We need to get surgery done." So I'm like, "Oh, here we go." I've never had any injuries before, and now I'm pitching the best I've ever pitched, and I get knocked down, and it's the one tool that was kind of broken. As a pitcher, you need your arm. So I didn't know kind of where to go from that. So I got a second opinion from one of the Twins doctors, Dr. Freehill, and he said, let's try to do some rehab and try to avoid surgery. And I did that for about a year, and I never started my junior year, or I don't believe my senior year after that. So I kind of switched roles into a relief pitcher, kind of a setup man. And my velocities got back up a little bit, but it really was never the same. So again, talking about the failure or setback, it was, you kind of start thinking, I'm going to school. Am I going to play baseball at the next level now with this injury? Should I get surgery? Should I not? Again, what direction are you going to take? And I decided to keep playing. I loved our team. We had a really good team. I ended up going to the World Series that year. And I wouldn't trade those memories, but it's that you're kind of thinking to yourself, the setback, am I even going to make the team next year? So I did a lot of rehab. I was in the training room probably for an hour and a half every day, lifting 1 pound weights, if that, and tried to do everything I could to get back up on the mound. And like I said, I ended up getting back on the mound, but definitely wasn't what I was expecting my college career to be like. It was you're at the top of your game, and all of a sudden now I don't even know if I'm going to be able to throw anymore. So I'm glad I got the second opinion. I'm glad I was able to. I actually did a rehab program in White Bear Lake. So I drive from Mankato once a month to White Bear Lake.
Holy cow.
Sit with the doctors and do the rehab program. They would write it for the month, and then I'd go back down to Mankato and share it with the program, the training program, and sat in the training room. Cool little story is Adam Thielen was in there all the time. So Adam and I became friends. Both, he had shoulder issues too. So we were just, lifting 1 pound weights by our side, up 1, 2, 3, down 1, 2, 3. And you name it 20, 25 times, it gets pretty boring. So you have a lot to talk about, but it definitely, you sit back and think, am I doing the right thing? Should I keep playing, or should I just give it up? But the competitive side in me, I didn't want to give it up. I still wanted to be the best. I still had a lot to prove, because my sophomore year, I thought, hey, maybe I'll, be able to play somewhere of a independent ball or see where it takes me. But it was more of, looking at the big picture, but I definitely focused more on athletics, or my academics, at that time, because I knew after college, I'm going to have to find a job and focus on that, because I'm probably not going to go play anywhere else after this. So
I feel like that's a recurring theme in your life. Then, you have a kind of a big setback, and like we talked about before too, you don't cash it in like so many other people would. You have a big injury like this, especially your throwing arm, your throwing shoulder, and you don't cash it in. You just keep on chugging along and making those small improvements that you can. So once again, where do you think that comes from, and how do you think you kind of kept going with that too after having such a big injury and pushing through that? Why didn't you cash it, and why didn't you step back from baseball? You had plenty of excuses to do so. So where did that come from, and how does someone push through that maybe going through the same thing that you're going through? They're going through it right now.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, as an athlete, it could be a minor setback. It could be, like mentally too. Like I can't hit the ball, or there's so many different things you go through as an athlete, not getting in your head. But as far as a minor setback of not getting moved up to the varsity JV team after my basketball season for B squad, or a big setback like injuring or hurting my rotator cuff and labrum, I think it's kind of who I was. I never wanted to give up on anything. I always wanted to be the best. From a young age, watching sports, you just look at what some of the upperclassmen have achieved, and it's like, I want to do that. I want to be a 3-sport captain. I want to be the best. You know, I mean, just to name some of the people that I watched growing up, Michael Bauer and Coach CB. I remember watching him all the time when I was a little kid, and they were really good. They had some really good teams, you know, growing up that I was able to watch. So it's always saying, I want to be like, you know, or achieve things that they have for Hastings. I want to be one of the better athletes that came through Hastings. Was one of my ideas of pushing myself through high school, of being one of the better athletes, comparing yourself to other people. But yeah, for college, it's kind of different. You're out there on your own and saying, hey, I got the decision. Do I want to keep playing, or do I want to focus on school and try to get a good job after this? But it's more of proving everybody wrong, having that drive, being very competitive. But yeah, I didn't want to give up. I'm like, even if I go out there and I pitch 1 or 2 innings, you know, I can still have fun out here. I miss it being out on the mound still today. There's no better feeling than that. So just to say, well, I got hurt, that's it for me. It wasn't in the cards for me. So
Nice. Wrapping up college too, your time in Mankato. Anything else to add in there, school wise, baseball wise? Any other awesome stories? Anything else to throw in there about your time in Mankato?
I would just say overall, I mean, it was a lot better. I know going into it, I expected it to be a great experience, but it really was. The coaching staff down there, it's incredible. The program they have right now, it's every year after year after year, the winning baseball program. The education, I graduated, like I said, I didn't know going in if I was going to be a math major, because I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a coach. Decided I took a few generals business classes, and I really liked business, and I have a family business. So I thought maybe there's a chance that I would work for family business, but they had some really good programs for business. And it just kind of, that's the direction I took instead of being I still kind of think, what if I would have been a math teacher and, you know, coach? I think it would have been pretty cool. But the one mistake I made was I took calculus my freshman year in the spring. So it was my first baseball season, and baseball season's very short and you're traveling. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't at class that often. So I pretty much had to read through the book and talk to some of my classmates of saying, what did I miss? What are some notes? And had to teach myself. I ended up getting an A in that class, but it was very difficult. And I knew if I would have continued on with math, that it would have been a similar story year after year. And the business classes, they had a more of a flexible schedule where we didn't have any classes on Friday, and you could take night classes or, you know, classes during the day that would work out between practices. Because even though it's a Division II sport, it was year round, and it was from say 5 a.m, get up, go to the weight room, work out, go to class, go to the training room for an hour and a half, 2 hours a day, ice down the shoulder, go back to the house and do homework for the rest of the night. So it was, you didn't have much time to do anything else, but I really enjoyed my experience down there. And like I said, some of my best friends today are the guys I played baseball with. So
yeah, I think 2 things you mentioned here too, when you went down to Winona, and just seeing some of even though that is Division II football, seeing some of the players that are on the field, it's pretty, I don't know if awe-inspiring is the word, but you're kind of blown away by it. You're like, oh, you know, Division II football, I'm just going to go there and do great. Right. And then you see some of the players and you're like, wow, this is this is the kind of real deal. And then like you're saying in college too, you're thinking, you kind of mentioned it. I'm going to go down to Mankato. I'm the top dog here. I'm just going to kind of walk on the field and do pretty great. And then, different things happen. And then you realize how much time and effort you actually had to put into that sport that are taken away from your classes, taken away from your social time. And it is almost, it's definitely over a full-time job. What you're talking about here too, the time in the weight room, maybe film you're doing one-on-one with a coach, the time you're practicing, the rehab afterwards. And then you finally get to the academic pieces too, and then try to fit in a social life from there too. So it's a pretty tough deal, and it's not, everyone's not built for that. So
Yeah, it is. It's pretty crazy. I didn't expect that even in the work, the weight room, the different things I learned about squatting or plyos or different techniques. It's incredible the amount of detail that every step of the way you go through. And like I said, for how long you spend in the training room for those, they were students, and they had hours that they had to put in too, but it was pretty impressive that they had the time to try to make me to make my arm healthier, or to feel better. But yeah, it's definitely a full-time job. It's a lot of fun, but you gotta have, your heart's got to be into it, or else after the first year you're going to say this isn't for me, or I want to focus on school more. But I don't regret it. It was one of the best experiences, even though my college career didn't go as planned. I always thought I was going to do a lot better than I did, but the competition's incredibly good. I mean, it's some of the better players that I played against in high school ended up being on my team. So it's fun to see, and it's definitely a challenge.
for sure. So Trent, take us through the last 10 years of your life here, your current occupation, what your family looks like now, where you're at. And like I said, we'll speed through the last 10 years here of your life post Mankato.
Yeah, so I ended up graduating in 2011 and ended up kind of doing my internship within our family company. I work at a trucking company in Rosemount, but I used my my uncle's last name for my internship. And I just wanted to see, hey, I tell all the employees that this is my internship. I'm just, I graduated in business, and I just want to see, kind of if I like it type deal, or what goes on there. So ended up doing that, and I loved it. So after I graduated, I ended up working for the family business, and I do logistics coordinating right now. So I've been doing that for 10 years now, kind of moving on right now, transitioning into helping out with sales a little bit. So it's a different aspect, and having a lot of fun with that so far. So that's what I've been doing. I'm married to my wife Ariel, and we have 2 boys. So that's kind of been a game changer. TJ is Trent Jr. is our oldest. He's 2.5. And we have a 4-month-old boy named Tyson. So
you're not busy at all right now.
Yeah, we've had some sleepless nights, and but all is good. I wouldn't change anything for the world. My wife's amazing, and 2 little boys it's so much fun. So, but we lived in Woodbury for a little while, for 5 years, and then we just built a house in Lakeville. So a little bit closer to my wife's work. She works in Egan at an elementary school, and a little bit closer to Rosemount, where I work, kind of in between our families. My wife's from Burnsville, and obviously I'm from Hastings. So right in between, we're about 15 minutes to the grandparents. So
nice.
It's been fun.
Awesome. Last couple questions then for you here, Trent. You gave a lot of good advice for a lot of student athletes now, and parents and coaches. So if we can maybe just hone down that advice just a little bit. So first part here, if you could talk to coaches and parents nowadays and give them 2 pieces of advice from your perspective and your experiences as a 3-sport captain in high school, as a college athlete as well. So a lot of experience you have. What would that advice be and why to parents and coaches?
That's a good question. I would say the biggest thing is make sure that the kids are educated on different forms and techniques, and that they're just not, learning the wrong techniques from the wrong type of clinic or coach. I feel like there's a lot of information out there, but just do your homework, and I would say for some of these coaches to even go to some of these college programs or just to get a different perspective or different technique or style. I know I did that myself. Like I said, I had all the faith in our coaches, but then in high school I went down to Mankato and learned different pitching techniques. I think coaches can do the same thing. They can go to different coaching clinics just to, make a judgment then of saying, okay, these are all the types of things I keep hearing. And I think maybe we should change the way we're coaching or teaching these kids about techniques and form. But also I would say don't necessarily be set on the ways of, well, we've always done it this way at Hastings, or we've always done that. I'll give the one. I remember my senior year, I was talking to Coach Bob Majeski, and he just got done coaching with Jake Kranz, one of the best quarterbacks, and now here I come. And I remember talking to Bob Majeski of saying, I think we should start running some shotgun formations. Well, we're not going to do that. We've never done that. But now I'm like, I watched the Hastings Raiders last year, and they got one of the best offenses I've seen. And it's like, I wish I would have done that back in the day. I could have, been more mobile, running outside the pocket, throwing on the run, or just different things that we could have incorporated with our skill set at that time. We had some really good wide receivers, and I feel like maybe we ran the ball too much. Or so I would say just don't be afraid to kind of see different perspectives on that and change the way you don't be afraid to change the offense, or don't be afraid to change some plays. So
Nice. Same kind of question now for student athletes. So the kids that are in high school right now, I got a lot of them. They're kind of getting this podcast here and they're listening to it nowadays. So if you could talk to these kids, all the experiences you have from high school, all the experiences you have from college, if you had to give these kids two pieces of advice, what do you think it would be and why?
I would say get involved in multiple sports. I think Hastings has always pushed that. It might be more difficult nowadays, but I think it made me more of a well-rounded athlete. Like I said, I was using basketball for, obviously staying in shape, but I love the game, and it could have been an easy decision for me to say, oh, I'm never going to go play basketball after high school. So, maybe I should start working on pitching now, but I didn't. And I wanted to be part of that team and had fun doing it. So I think it kind of creates more well-rounded athletes that way. But another bit of advice I would say is just have fun and enjoy the game. It's some of the best moments of these kids' lives, that they're in high school playing with all their buddies. And I think of just different moments of looking back of how much fun I had of walking out onto Todd Field for the first time. Friday Night Lights, it was probably the best moment. Really, I'm out here on Todd Field. I was so nervous. Everybody's watching me, or getting introduced at a basketball game in the gym and the band's playing, or, starting a game off, standing on the mound. Just some of those moments, they still give me chills of saying, just go out there and have fun. Work your tail off in the off season or at practice every day. But when it comes time, when you need to perform, trust yourself that you've done your homework and that you've done all the preparation you can to get to that moment. But I think some kids, like before, if you're struggling, learn from it and try to turn it into a positive, saying, well, I don't want another bad season, so I'm going to work my tail off this summer and turn it into a learning experience. But a lot of that is when it's your time, just have fun with it, be relaxed. So I would say just, to tell kids that, I would say don't put too much pressure on yourselves.
Nice. So Trent, that's all the questions I got for you here. Last couple minutes here, the microphone's yours. Anything else you'd like to add in? Anything I forgot to ask you? Any other shout outs? Like I said, the last couple minutes is yours, and you can go for it.
Well, I was going to say thanks again for doing this. It's pretty cool to kind of to live the glory days again. But the Hastings community, like I said, has been great. It's the teachers and the coaches, they were absolutely amazing. And another thing I wanted to mention too, just a little thing of today, I still remember about Trent Hansen and the things that you take away from, say, what might be like little moments, but they last a long time. Is Trent would have everybody, he would pick a different player each day, and they would have to come, to the team with either a word, I think it was a word or a quote of the day. And that's how we would start the practice. And I'm not sure if the basketball team still does this, but I still remember it. He came the one day when it was his turn and said, the word is opportunity. And you think about that, and I still remember it just clear as day, that it's like, you have an incredible opportunity as a high school student athlete to play with all your buddies, to be out on Todd Field, and to be out pitching on the mound or whatever your sport is. It's something that still to this day I remember it, and it's just little things like that motivate you and that you keep with you, and different coaching styles that maybe you thought, oh, it's just this is what we've done and kids won't remember it, but no, I still remember different things like that they stay with you for a lifetime. So it's pretty cool that the impact that your teachers and your coaches have on you in high school for the rest of your life.
That's awesome. Trent, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.